CNN targets Christian end-time beliefs as dangerous enough to cause lawsuits. Last month, CNN took aim against Christian end-time beliefs, saying they were dangerous and could cause, quote, psychological damage and PTSD, end of quote. Now, as soon as you see the word damage, you know that potential legal attacks might follow. And in our society today, our criminal justice system is falling apart and becoming corrupt. So attacks like these become much more possible. Could those, quote, scared by teaching about the tribulation and the return of Jesus sue their churches because they were scared? Could teaching about the return of Jesus eventually be deemed a hate crime? Will discussing end times soon be made a source of disciplinary action at work? Might Christian end time books get banned? That's where articles like this CNN article can lead. And because this channel focuses on our blessed hope and the return of Jesus and all its ramifications, that means every one of our community are potential targets of what this article, titled, "For Some Christians, Rapture Anxiety Can Take a Lifetime to Heal," end of quote. We are the potential victims of an article like this. But before we get into the article in detail, I want to give a shout out to Dr. Alan Kirshner, whose blog featured this article and made me aware of it, made me aware of just how dangerous this type of teaching might become. Now, let's get back to the article. Now, here's a quote from their article just to give you flavor. Quote, "Rapture anxiety, as it is often called," really, I'd never heard that term before, "is recognized by some faith experts and mental health professionals." Pay attention. They said the word mental health professionals, as a type of religious trauma. Darren Slade, president and CEO of the Global Center for Religious Research, has been studying religious trauma across several faiths and denominations for years. Here's his quote. "This is a real thing. It's a chronic problem," he says, "of rapture anxiety. This is a new area of study. But in general, our research has revealed that religious trauma leads to an increase of anxiety, depression, paranoia, and even some OCD-like behaviors." End of quote. Can you see where this might end up? This channel has always thought that eventually our culture will declare Christianity a mental illness, listening to voices, like hearing from God, believing in spirits, etc. But now it appears they want to label those who teach specifically that Jesus is coming back as dangerous. Well, of course, because Jesus coming back is the great threat to their current lifestyle. In the article, an attempt is made to divide Christians into camps. The article explains that mainline Protestants and Roman Catholics don't have these same end-time beliefs. Thus, in the writer's mind, it is only the fundamentalists that are the danger. You know, people like you and me. The article continues about this guy, Darren Slade, their so-called expert. Quote, "Slade knows just how deep modern rapture theology can go. As a Baptist preacher and religious scholar, he was surrounded by peers who would attend end of days or end of times conferences. These meetings, many of which are still held today, and yes, Darren, this ministry is planning how to prepare for the last days conferences all over the USA next year, so I imagine we'll be a major target of yours." Anyway, he continued, "Focus heavily on events in the Christian book of Revelation and attempt to connect spiritual elements with the current events in the world." Yes, Darren, this is called watching. The New Testament commands this 23 separate times. This is exactly what we're called to do. But I digress. He continued. This and other realizations led Slade to leave the Christian faith and focus his energy on the academic side of religion. It was a devastating transition. I lost my family. I lost my community. I lost everything, Slade says. Eventually, he was diagnosed with PTSD from his experiences. There it is, person outside the faith, and someone who has issues is blaming the end times. Amazing. If the great deceiver wants to prepare the world for his man, the Antichrist, what better way than to marginalize the teachings on how to prepare for the last days? If you don't recognize the Antichrist, you'll be deceived. And of course, that's the plan. Then, a major factor in Slade leaving the faith comes out. Listen to this. Quote, they don't feel welcome. They don't feel the church matches their personal values. They are tired of what they see as a system of peddling in shame and rejection. End of quote. Aha! He says the church doesn't match his personal values. What might be those, quote, values? Quick study of the website of his organization shows a fascination with LGBTQ issues. It highlights almost everything they talk about. Amazing how many attacks on Christianity stem from this one issue. However, I don't minimize the danger from groups like this trying to silence discussion of the end times. The return of Jesus is preceded by a time of difficulty that requires preparation. It's not that we're talking about the return of Jesus too much, we're talking about it too little. Marquis Lachlan, Pastor Jake McCandless, and I are preparing a series of conferences, as we said, throughout the USA on how to prepare for the last days. And the CNN article highlights that just such conferences might not always be available. There are people who want to shut these things down. Someday, and maybe someday soon, they will shut us down. We're totally aware of that. When we begin to announce dates for these conferences in your area, we suggest you plan on joining us. And when we begin fundraising to help us put others on, consider paying it forward so that other Christians throughout the USA can hear this message before it's too late. Of course, those opposed to Christianity will do more than simply try to silence us. Totalitarian governments purge or eliminate those opposed to their ideas. The top 3 totalitarian regimes of the last 100 years killed hundreds of millions. Click right here to see if the Great Reset is going to purge Christians before the coming of the Antichrist, and probably before any rapture takes place. This is Nelson, and I'll see you there.